Hello there and welcome to my Retro Media Room. Today I want to show you 5 exclusive PlayStation games that are absolutely essential for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro owners. Now regarding any PC ports of anything, for the sake of this video I am only talking about the console and PlayStation side of things. If PC is your bag, cool, that is outside the scope of this video. With that being said, let's get to our first title.
Warrant is en route.
For obvious reasons, the history of Spider-Man as a franchise runs really deep within Sony and PlayStation, with Sony owning the film rights to it, all the way back to the PlayStation 3 originally using the same font as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. Additionally, you had the Blu-ray releases of Spider-Man that Sony promoted all the way to the point of bundling it together with certain PlayStation 3 releases, which made sense since Sony had been backing up Blu-ray, and PlayStation 3 was the first console to have a built-in Blu-ray player, hence its $600 price tag. So from the font on the PlayStation 3 being the same, the Spider-Man movies being licensed by Sony, all of it came together, cross-promoted each other as a major media campaign. Funny enough, even with all that history, this was the first Spider-Man game to be a PlayStation exclusive, because all the ones previous to that were multi-platform. While there have been plenty of solid Spider-Man games over the years, I've been playing them since I was a kid, all the way back to the Sega Genesis. But when Sony decided to go all in and do a PlayStation 4 exclusive Spider-Man game, naturally it made sense for them to hire the likes of Insomniac Games, who had been widely known for Ratchet & Clank, Spyro the Dragon, Resistance Fall of Man, so they already had a really deep working relationship with them. And they're a highly talented studio, and it really was a wise decision because they made what is easily the greatest Spider-Man game ever made. They absolutely nailed the feel of what a Spider-Man game should be. And it did so well, in fact, that's what ultimately made Sony pull the trigger and buy out Insomniac Games as a studio to make them an official partner. Now the version we're going to be focused on is Spider-Man Remastered for PlayStation 5, and with its PlayStation 5 Pro enhancements. But, real quick, we need to take a quick look at the PlayStation 4 version of Spider-Man because there are various key differences, one of which is actually quite controversial. So there was quite the fan divide when they remastered Spider-Man because they changed the Peter Parker character model. And to be honest, I'm in the camp that actually likes the original better. Now when it comes to graphics and performance, it's pretty night and day. The PlayStation 4 version runs at only 30 frames per second, at about 1500p, which is all based off of the PS4 Pro updates. It's a solid way to play it. It still looks great, but it's simply inferior to playing the remastered version on PlayStation 5 Pro. So with the PlayStation 5 Remaster, they've added new graphical features and modes. The game now has options for ray tracing, 4K resolution, 60 frames per second, and across the board the lighting effects are dramatically changed. Now on the base PS5 version, you're not able to have all of these features at once without certain sacrifices. That's why there are 3 different options to choose from: fidelity, performance, and performance with ray tracing. Now the PlayStation 5 Pro on the other hand, you basically get the best of all worlds. You get an improved ray tracing, 60 frames per second, and you have a native 1440p resolution that's upscaled to 4K through PSSR. Now there is a higher frame rate option that goes to about 80 to 100 frames a second. For me, that's not really consistent enough. I'd rather have a 120. So since they weren't able to do that, I just stick with the 60 frames per second, which I hardly noticed any drops whatsoever. It's certainly excellent on the PS5. There's a lot of new features they added from the original game, but it is particularly great on the PS5 Pro. It really is phenomenal. So at the end of the day, when you do a direct comparison from the PlayStation 4 version of Spider-Man all the way to the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's truly insane. Now put aside all the different ports and versions and all that, at the end of the day, this is about this being an amazing Spider-Man game, and it really is. Insomniac made a masterpiece here. The web swinging alone is truly incredible. I remember as a kid how much I wanted to web swing as Spider-Man, and even in Spider-Man X-Men Arcade on the Super Nintendo, I thought it was really cool how you could do it on that in just 2D. To go from that all the way to this after all the different evolutions of Spider-Man swinging through various games, and they've done it pretty well in past games, but this, God, they just nailed it. You just never get sick of it. You just web swing all day long. And the detail of New York is just as incredible this side of that Matrix demo, or at least pretty close. That demo is pretty mind-blowing. Not only that, but the free-flowing and cinematic combat is truly top-notch. It's easy to pick up and challenging to master. You have tons of moves and gadgets to unlock that enable all sorts of options, yet it doesn't feel too overwhelming. And everything is cinematic and seamless in real time. What they crafted over at Insomniac really does feel like you're in a Spider-Man movie. One moment you're web swinging, you're chasing a car, then you hop on the car and you pull the bad guys out of the car, and then you're stopping the car from wrecking, which earns you bonus points, all of this in real time. Of course, you have your primary missions to move the story along, you have your side missions, but what's really great and addicting is going all around New York finding all the different secrets, landmarks, and backpacks that unlock more suits and abilities and experience. And speaking of suits, there's many of them, many of which that give you additional abilities, because you're able to customize in various slots different attributes to your abilities from your suit. And there are several different suits that are exclusive to this remaster. And speaking of content, that's another thing nice about this remaster. It includes all the DLC the game ever had, whereas on the PlayStation 4 version, you still have to buy them separately. Now, from a story perspective within the world of Spider-Man, it's actually interesting they didn't go with the origin story angle. They just kind of throw you right into it where he's been Spider-Man for years. So you're actually getting more of a veteran Spider-Man rather than a new Spider-Man. The voice acting, the characters, the dialogue, spare no expense, everything is extremely top-notch here. The soundtrack is also fantastic here. It's dynamic where it actually changes based on what you're doing. So the moment you start web slinging, it kicks in the music and it makes everything epic. Even other superhero games rarely capture what this has achieved with how you feel like you're a superhero. You become Spider-Man. You have everything at your disposal. Because like I said before, the way everything is so seamless, you feel like you're playing a Spider-Man movie in so many sequences. It's truly insane. So Spider-Man Remastered, it is absolutely fantastic, a must-own on PlayStation 5, and if you have a PlayStation 5 Pro, it really is one of the most premier examples of a Pro-enhanced game. So I've actually been playing Demon's Souls for a very long time because I started playing it around the time it released back in 2009 on the PlayStation 3. Because per usual, this is yet another phenomenal remake from Bluepoint Games. Of course, I've covered several other games on the channel from Bluepoint, including Shadow of the Colossus Remake, God of War HD, and so on. They really are masters at their craft. And Demon's Souls is easily the most beautiful work they've ever done. And the beauty of what they do is they don't compromise any of the original gameplay of the original game. They maintain that, but make it more beautiful than ever before. So while this is a remake of a 2009 game, easily this was one of the most beautiful games this entire generation. I'll never forget playing it on PS5 for the first time. I was absolutely blown away. It was the first game to truly feel next gen when it first came out. And I had a Series X before PS5 and I loved it, but nothing was really blowing my socks off until Demon's Souls. That was the first game where I felt like, okay, this is it. We're in the next gen now. Now, there are a few graphics modes to choose from in Demon's Souls. You have cinematic mode, that's basically all the bells and whistles turned on for 4K resolution, more geometry detail, better shadows, but at 30 frames per second, whereas the performance mode has a little bit less of the detail at 1440p at 60 frames per second. Now, the performance mode is a fantastic way to play it, especially for combat. It's a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. They highly optimize this game from the beginning. Similar to Spider-Man, if you have a PlayStation 5 Pro, you're going to get extra bells and whistles because this has a native update. With the Pro mode enabled, you have a native internal resolution of 1440p, but the PSSR upscales it to 4K at 60 frames per second with all the detail from the cinematic mode, so you get the best of both worlds. Not only are the graphics phenomenal, but the sound and atmosphere are also really top-notch. Now, if you're not very familiar with From Software games, there's a couple of things that you need to understand. When it comes to the combat, it's pure in its simplicity. It's not flashy, it doesn't have a bunch of combos and moves, it's very straightforward and simple. You can block, roll, light attack, heavy attack, sprinting attacks, things like that. There are a few intricacies, but it's not that complicated. But I think it's in a very good way, because with the basic tools you have, you need to judge when and when to not use them appropriately, especially depending on what weapon you have. Because each and every enemy you encounter, you need to be on your toes because everything can hurt you really bad. Because in case it wasn't obvious, this game is not easy, especially at first. You need to know when to block, you need to know when to roll, or if you're going two-handed, you may not block at all. But that's the beauty of its simple yet challenging design. Then there's boss fights, which is an absolute highlight within any Souls game. Boss fights are truly awesome. They're challenging, rewarding, scary, everything in between. So when you fight a boss, you got to figure that boss out, you got to give it your best, and yeah, you're probably going to die. But that is perfectly okay. Dying is part of the process with this game. But honestly, one of the things that steals the show is From Software's map designs. From Software's ability to design maps is some of the best in the entire gaming industry, and always has been. And when you consider the fact that all the map designs in Demon's Souls stem from 2009, and they still hold up in 2025, that's pretty incredible. So the maps themselves are just as much characters as anything else. The enemy placements, the secrets, the alternate paths, the unlocked paths, there's so much in each and every map. There's so much thought put into them. They really are amazing. Because I love From Software games, but this iteration of Demon's Souls is up there with Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3 for me. I absolutely love it. But I love the fact that in From Software games, especially the likes of Elden Ring, as well as Demon's Souls, you can really tailor it to how you want to play. Myself, for example, I tend to prefer being a knight with knight's armor, sword and shield, with less emphasis on magic. But there's all sorts of other options you're able to do, different weapons you're able to wield, magic you're able to use. So it is up to you how you want to build your character. And that's what helps you persevere, because you persevere in your way. There's nothing like having a hard time on a section of a map and you learn and you improve and you, quote, get good, and then you overcome it. And then before you know it, you're destroying areas that you were once struggling in, and you're beating bosses on first tries. New Game Plus is fantastic. You're able to wreak havoc on old enemies you had trouble with. You're able to build your character up continuously. Now, I'm going to be honest, there is a bit of a learning curve to Demon's Souls, as there is with pretty much all From Software titles. So you're going to research as you play it to understand every little facet, because there's a lot of layers to this within all the mechanics of the game. It's not a gripe, it's just how it is. Such as your body form, soul form, and the effect on the environments if you die too many times in your body form, things like that. But trust me, when you get into it, it all starts to make sense. So Demon's Souls, if you want cutting edge graphics, challenging difficulty, awesome atmosphere, awesome map design, you're a From Software fan, whatever the case, it's an essential game. It's one of the greatest launch games ever made. I really love this game and I can't recommend it enough.
Whither do they call to me? She's ready.
Find your way home. You are free.
So the interesting thing about God of War, it's the only title on this list that did not get a native PlayStation 5 upgrade. It's still technically only a PS4 game, but it did get a patch that enabled exclusive PlayStation 5 performance features. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get the performance, but you're also able to use your PlayStation 4 controller if you want to. But what it doesn't have is haptic feedback, adaptive triggers and stuff on your PlayStation 5 controller, but in my book, that's not a big deal. And the cherry on top of the sundae, you didn't have to pay for it. This was a free patch you got versus a paid upgrade for it to be a PlayStation 5 game. So that's very nice. So what do you get on PlayStation 5 then? Well, on the PlayStation 4 Pro, you had a favor resolution mode and you had a favor performance mode. The favor resolution had a 4K checkerboard at 30 frames per second. That was pretty much the most consistent way to play it, in my opinion, at the time, because the favor performance mode, which was a dynamic resolution that was 1080p to 1440p, didn't have the most stable frame rate. It was usually around 40 to 50 frames, if not as low as 30 at times. On the PlayStation 5, on the other hand, they upgraded it where you get that checkerboard 4K, which still looks really nice, and you get 60 frames per second, and it's virtually locked. I rarely ever notice drops. Now on the PlayStation 5 Pro, there's not really much of a difference. All of the optimization has already been done on the PlayStation 5, so it's pretty much the same experience either way. Now the beautiful part about playing God of War on your PS5 versus any other hardware before it makes it that much more seamless when you go from playing God of War 2018 right into Ragnarok, which is also an absolute masterpiece, and I can already tell you is going to be on a part 2 of this. Because that's what I did. I actually didn't beat 2018 on the PlayStation 4 until I played it on PlayStation 5, and then I played it back to back with Ragnarok, which felt like experiencing a singular epic story across 2 games, and was one of the best modern gaming experiences I've ever had. Another interesting thing about God of War, especially if you come from the original titles, those were all based in Greek mythology. God of War 2018, or God of War 4, really goes into Norse mythology, even though Kratos is Greek, but now he's in more of the Nordic lands. So it's pretty interesting how they switched it up like that, which is really cool. I love Nordic settings. The graphics for the game are really incredible. The game might as well have come out yesterday. It still holds up in 2025 without question. Now, all the graphics put aside, the story, the characters, the production value, the gameplay, everything here is the definition of AAA level quality. Now, don't get me wrong, Terrence Carson was great as Kratos for a lot of years, but Christopher Judge simply raised the bar. He really is incredible as Kratos. He became Kratos. They truly added depth and meaning to Kratos as a character, not only through Christopher Judge's performance, but the writing, the storytelling. There's many moments that are very moving and powerful, and I really appreciate the father and son dynamics they've created through Kratos and his son Atreus. It's ultra cinematic, there's a great story to tell with many other great characters, terrific performances. This really is a masterpiece in storytelling. And to complement all of that is amazing combat. Beautifully animated, really hard-hitting, and tons of fun. Like I said about Spider-Man, and I'll probably say again in some form about other games, easy to pick up, challenging to master. That's the perfect balance that you want in games like this. Lots of moves to unlock. It has, of course, all those RPG light elements, various sets of armor you're able to unlock and find that kind of customize Kratos to your liking, because all of them have different stats to them. The game rewards you for exploring the various environments to find all of its secrets. Really well put together puzzles. The game is always engaging you as the player. While Kratos had his Blades of Chaos in the original games, which were fiery and awesome, in this God of War, his primary weapon is the Leviathan Axe, which is ice-based and really cool. But probably my favorite aspect about the Leviathan Axe is the way you're able to throw it and retrieve it. It's one of the most satisfying mechanics I've ever seen in a game. Now, I'm not saying it's challenging like a Souls game would be, but it definitely has a healthy amount of it to where it keeps it really interesting. Because you really do want to master the combat, all of its intricacies. It's really a blast. Because later in the game, there are optional trials you're able to do that challenge you as a player and see what you're capable of. There's just moments between the characters and the story, the way it's directed, the way it's performed. There's just not very many games out there that capture these ultra cinematic and moving moments. It's really powerful stuff. That's what I really love about this. As much as I know people love the older God of Wars, and I do too, but this really is my preferred God of War. I really love the balance of the hard-hitting combat, the storytelling, the cinematic gameplay and cutscenes, and just the depth of the characters. So God of War 2018, it really is a masterpiece. It was one of the greatest games ever on the PS4, and it plays better than ever on PlayStation 5. So if you have a PlayStation 5, you absolutely need to play this game.
We must show everyone that we serve our Lord with courage, integrity, and self-control.
You say that like it's easy.
It's never easy, Jin. I struggle with it every day. But we must set an example for our people by remaining true to our code and to ourselves. That is the meaning of honor. I've not her samurai.
Now, when it comes to the different versions of Ghost of Tsushima, of course, it originally came out on the PlayStation 4, and then they natively upgraded it to PlayStation 5 with the Director's Cut. There's also a Director's Cut on the PlayStation 4 version, so if you already have that, it's only a $10 upgrade for the PlayStation 5 version, but if you only have the base version of the game on PlayStation 4, then it's a $30 upgrade. But there are some exclusive features on the PlayStation 5 version that are worth considering, as well as a little bit of benefit on the PlayStation 5 Pro. So on the PlayStation 5 version, you have the option of a resolution mode that's a 4K checkerboard resolution at 60 frames per second, and then you have a performance mode that's a lower resolution at a locked 60 frames per second, whereas the resolution's only targeted 60. So on base PS5, the resolution's a good balance of both, but it's not a locked frame rate. On the PlayStation 5 Pro, on the other hand, it's pretty much locked in the resolution mode, so you get a slight performance boost. Otherwise, there is no native PlayStation 5 Pro update. The biggest jump here in terms of content that you get is the Director's Cut content, which is all the DLC of the game, the story expansion, and all of that. So if you want the complete experience of the game, pretty much the Director's Cut is the Game of the Year edition of the game. Just get that, and you get all the bells and whistles with the PlayStation 5 native port. Another welcome change to the PlayStation 5 version that was somewhat controversial when it came out was that when you switched to Japanese voice acting in the game, because, a lot of people wanted it to feel as Japanese as possible, was that the lip syncing was only in English, primarily due to the fact that all the cutscenes were pre-rendered. They weren't in real-time gameplay. Whereas in the PlayStation 5 version, all the cutscenes are rendered in real time, so when you change it to Japanese, the lip sync is able to go with Japanese, just as well as English. So if you want it to be in Japanese language and you want it to feel a little bit more authentic in Japanese in that way, you're able to do that now, and it's all seamless. Me personally, I'm totally fine with the English acting. I think they're really good performances. That's what I'm used to at this point, but I totally get if people wanted it to be in Japanese. I'm going to put this simply. Ghost of Tsushima is the greatest samurai experience I've ever had in a video game. Fantastic story and characters, great performances, amazing combat. This game is really, really a treat as a single-player experience. And it even has a fun online co-op experience that I played with my cousin a pretty good deal. It's called the Legends mode, and it's a totally twisted, different, dark take on the formula of the game that's completely separate from the campaign, and it's really fun. It could have been its own game. While somewhat limited, you can definitely play it solo if you choose to, and it's still quite a bit of fun. Like the other titles on this list, this just drips with AAA quality stuff. And like I said, if you want a samurai experience, boy, you get that in spades here. Not only samurai, but ninja. And that's part of the character arc of Jin Sakai. Normally, he wouldn't use ninja tactics, but in his situation, he pretty much has no choice but to. Because after you're defeated in battle, your uncle, Lord Shimura, is captured by the enemy, and he's making it his mission to go and rescue his uncle. And they did a really fine job of introducing you to all the game's mechanics through flashbacks with your uncle. Just like I said about the other titles, you can say it with me. Easy to pick up, challenging to master. But I would make the claim that Ghost of Tsushima has even more depth than all the other games. Because by the end of the game, you really do feel like a veteran samurai master in the combat. The evolution you make throughout the game and how the combat flows and how you go from making lots of mistakes to having a really interesting flow through the combat and how you pull off all your moves and take out your targets. It's really something special. The combat is phenomenal. I mentioned before how Jin Sakai has to be a ninja as well as a samurai, and that definitely shines here as well as the free-flowing combat. The stealth mechanics are well done and very satisfying, so you can be more or less stealthy if you want to. You really can kind of approach it how you like. The performances are great here, including the main villain. He's actually a really interesting main villain. His performance is great. So the villain is compelling. The complexity of your uncle, Lord Shimura, and their backstory is really interesting. I really like Jin Sakai as the main protagonist, and there's other interesting side characters that are well written and well performed. The graphics and art direction are truly fantastic here, so that's what's really nice about playing it at its highest fidelity on current hardware. One thing I really liked about the game is your horse. You actually have 3 different names to choose from your horse, and you pick from a stable of horses, and once you pick it, that's your horse for the game. I really like that, so you actually legitimately become attached to your horse and you care about it. Honestly, that's something I haven't seen since the likes of Epona and Zelda, so I really appreciated that about it. There's tons to explore, many secrets to find, tons of moves and abilities to unlock, and it's one of those things where it's not just moves that, well, as you play the game, you're going to unlock everything by default. No, there's tons of stuff to unlock that are very missable. So you could plow through the game and not unlock everything. And of course, that's not nearly as fun. It's really awesome to go through and find everything, including tons of cosmetic options for your outfits and swords. And there's many different stats within the outfit, so you really are able to build your character in specific ways. A true testament to how fun and engaging this game is the fact that I platinumed the game when I wasn't trying to. It just kind of happened. That is a good game. So Ghost of Tsushima, it really is a cinematic and fun masterpiece that is a true love letter to Japanese culture and samurai lore. So it's really awesome. I can't recommend it enough.
Baby girl.
Right up front, I can tell you The Last of Us Part 1 is in my top 10 games of all time since the PlayStation 3. So I really, really do love this game, and I've been wanting to talk about it. And this remake of The Last of Us on PlayStation 5 is one of the most dramatic facelifts I've ever seen in a game, this side of Demon's Souls. And don't get me wrong, I played The Last of Us Remastered for years. I loved that version of the game. It is true to the PlayStation 3 original, just better. The fact that they took the beautiful engine they crafted for Part 2 and fit it over the original engine of Part 1 was a really genius idea, and it worked out beautifully. It's really the best of both worlds. When you look at these two side by side, there's just no comparison. It looks like a different game, but not in a bad way. It just looks way better. Similar to how Bluepoint does their fantastic work, they did a phenomenal job here at improving it in every possible way, yet not doing anything to hurt the game's original core sensibilities. So they didn't go in and change any dialogue or acting or performances or anything. They didn't do any of that stuff. All of it is exactly like you know and remember, but they just made it look way better. The character models are substantially better. The environments are gorgeous. Because that's one of the things about Part 2 that everybody can agree on. The game is beautiful. So to take that engine and retroactively fit it onto Part 1 was genius in my opinion. As well as the workbench details that they added in Part 2. To take that and bring it back to Part 1 and improve that was also a nice touch. Now the PlayStation 5 version of Part 1 has several different graphics modes to choose from, so you kind of pick what's right for you. All of them are solid in their own right, and the game looks phenomenal. But the PlayStation 5 Pro, on the other hand, you're able to get the best of everything, just like the other games. It's internally running at 1440p. They upscale to 4K with the PSSR AI, and it runs at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. So you get the best of everything with the PlayStation 5 Pro. Because our brains are so used to 24 frames a second for movies, when you play it in the fidelity mode at native 4K at 30 frames a second, it really does feel like you're playing a CGI movie in real time. It really does look that good. For me, this is one of the cases where the way they changed the character models, the way they made them look more realistic and lifelike, improved on the original to a really great effect. Ellie and Joel look so much better than they originally did, and I love the original so much. Ellie in particular looks way better than she originally did, because honestly, even originally, I loved Ellie, but she looked a little funny, to be honest. In the new one, she looks fantastic, totally natural, and Joel just looks better than ever. And you just get more nuance in the performances with the advanced facial animations, so it's just better. I'm not going to get into too many spoilers here in case you've never played The Last of Us, because you owe it to yourself to experience it if you haven't, but the opening to The Last of Us is one of the most impactful openings in video game history. It's truly remarkable. And with these visual upgrades in this remake, it just makes it that much better. The combat has always been really solid, with a mixture of stealth and action. And like Resident Evil, you have limited resources, especially when you crank it up to higher difficulties, which I recommend. This game is amazing on grounded difficulty, because it really makes you scavenge for every bullet and every arrow you can. And let me tell you this, bricks and bottles become your best friends. Trust me on that. Unlike the other titles on this list, this is just as much a horror game as it is an action and drama. The various types and designs of the clickers and their sound effects are really some of the best in gaming history. They're scary, intense, and you have to have strategy in how you deal with all the individual ones. As scripted and linear as this game is, it still manages to never play out the same exact way twice. Because of the enemy placements, smart AI, good level design, you never know how things are going to go exactly each and every time you play it, and manages to still stay fresh. So it has really good replayability. Couple that with the fact that it does have a new game plus that's actually rather fun. The soundtrack, the atmosphere, the lighting, the story, I mean, this just set a whole new bar when this came out all the way back on PlayStation 3, and this remake just takes that and just accentuates everything. So in my book, I just can't imagine owning a PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro and not having The Last of Us Part 1. That would just be crazy to me because this game is just a landmark title. When I think back to playing the prologue for the first time on PlayStation 3, I just remember thinking at the time, what did I just experience? This is going to change the landscape of gaming. And I felt that way with Metal Gear Solid, I felt that way with Ocarina of Time, and honestly, The Last of Us, back when it first came out on PlayStation 3, it kind of did that. Similar to God of War with Kratos and Atreus, the heart of all this is Joel and Ellie, and their relationship, and the arc of their characters. It's just really something special. It always has been. And honestly, I'll just say now more than ever, it's worth going back and either experiencing The Last of Us Part 1 for the first time or reliving it again, especially if you've never played this remake. It's like a whole new game in the best way possible. I can't imagine them doing it better. I've really been enjoying playing these on PlayStation 5 Pro. The upgrade was worth it for me. So if you want to see me covering more games running on PlayStation 5 Pro, click on the video on your screen where I cover PlayStation 4 games running on it. I've had a good time going back and checking out classics. Thank you for watching up to this point. God bless, and we'll catch you later.